So this week, another huge government pension fund has been exposed for silently buying MicroStrategy. But let's not forget, this pension fund in Asia isn't the only one trying to get Bitcoin exposure that's creating a supply suffocation. Earlier in this week, we covered why the Saudi Arabian central bank was buying 25,000 shares of MicroStrategy, as well as 14 different states in the United States getting exposure to MicroStrategy as well. And by doing so, getting exposure to Bitcoin. In my 9 years in Bitcoin, I've never seen as bullish as a setup as I've seen today. What I've been saying for the last couple of months, this has been the most bullish cycle from a news perspective. I think the price action is just catching up. We're making all-time highs and it feels amazing. Joining us today, we have a very special guest. We have the one and only Michelle WEEKLEY joining us, and let's jump straight into the news, everybody. No more delay. Let's get into the sauce. All right, everybody. So what am I talking about? South Korea's $800 billion pension fund eyes direct Bitcoin investment. It goes on to say Bitcoin's price has been relatively stable over the past month, trading around 100,000 and fluctuating within a narrow range of $35,000. This consolidation phase follows a nearly 2-week rally driven by Bitcoin's surge, improved risk appetite due to a temporary easing of U.S.-China trade tensions. The 105 level remains a key resistance, so it's just talking about the price. But let's get into the actual news. South Korea's National Pension Service, one of the world's largest pension funds with over $800 billion in assets under management, is considering direct investments in Bitcoin. This potential shift in public fund strategy comes amid growing political and legislative support for digital assets. Recent regulatory changes now allow national pension funds to allocate capital to cryptocurrencies. Political leaders from both major parties have endorsed this pivot, with Democratic Party leader pledging to approve spot Bitcoin ETF if elected president, aiming to foster a safer investment environment, particularly for younger South Koreans. You know what's really interesting about this as well is this is exactly what you're hearing in the US. Like, it's the same exact pattern. Right. I think this is why this last election was so consequential, because it gave regulatory clarity to the world that Bitcoin wasn't going to be banned by the most powerful government on the face of the planet, which is, of course, the US government. Anyways, it continues to say, until now, the NPS has limited its exposure to crypto through indirect means, such as acquiring $35 million worth of shares in MicroStrategy and investing over $45 million in Coinbase. These positions reflect the fund's growing comfort with digital asset-related equities. While no direct purchases of Bitcoin have yet been made by the NPS, the alignment of legislative momentum, political will, and shifting public sentiment signals a credible path forward towards institutional adoption. If realized, this would mark a significant milestone for crypto integration within traditional public investment frameworks in Asia. Now, what's really interesting about all of this is the size of essentially the global pension fund assets, right? So currently it's sitting at 58.5 trillion at the end of 2024, a 4.9% increase compared to the previous year. So Bitcoin's current market cap is sitting at roughly only 2 trillion, right? You know, we always see the graph by Michael Saylor talking about the global assets. It's roughly at 900 trillion. Just pension funds themselves sit at 58 trillion. So just put a small percentage, right? So let's say global pension funds put 1 to 2, and we all know how that starts. You dip your toe in, and you buy a little bit of Bitcoin, you end up being 100% exposed after you realize it's the best asset the world has ever seen, right? So you could just imagine these pension funds, they start seeing, oh my God, this is probably a really good idea. And, they start getting more exposure, and this is obviously number goes up. And I think that's what we're all witnessing here. The other thing that I'll say, and I want to take advantage of the fact that we have Michelle WEEKLEY on the show, and of course my beautiful wife to my left, Sophie, joining us. Michelle, why do you think that these pension funds haven't gotten direct exposure to Bitcoin yet? Why do you think it's always been they've been buying proxies? They've been buying MicroStrategy, they've been buying Coinbase, some have been buying the ETFs, but I haven't seen any news of any of these pension funds buying spot Bitcoin. My question to you is, why is that happening, number one? And number two, doesn't that create kind of like a danger for potential paper Bitcoin?
Absolutely. So, the big institutions are always late and slow to adopt. They like to think of themselves as slow and steady, but they're really just cautious and they're late adopters. So, like you mentioned before, we really just received regulatory clarity from the United States, which is the largest market and really a signal to global markets. So, there was a lot of regulatory like reasons regulatorily that people were not adopting. And now that that's been cleared up and everybody has like a green light, they're coming. I think there will always be a large percentage of them that do hold paper Bitcoin, but inevitably some of them will come to hold the asset itself, and those will be the most valuable companies in the future.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Sophie, what's your take on this?
I think it's something, well, obviously what Michelle said, but it's also something that I've seen like in my own family. I think people that have pensions are probably older people, people who, are of a later age, and they don't understand the low time preference that it takes to be a Bitcoiner. They don't understand that you have to hold for a long time, and they would rather have something a little bit more stable. But the number one thing that orange pills everybody is number go up. And so I think that as number go up, people are going to keep buying in. But regardless, they're going to have to wait for, they're going to have to pay their dues and go through the
Yeah,
cycles.
100%. I think, and also too, like there's a cost to waiting, right? Like I think right now, where the U.S. government essentially put a rubber stamp of approval. By the way, I want to give a shout out to the live stream, about to break 1,000 live viewers between YouTube and X. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Of course, shout out to the Rumble audience. Love you guys. Smash the like button. You're watching Simply Bitcoin Live. I'm hosting the show today, Nico, with my wife next to me, and of course we got Michelle Weekly in the house. Michelle, I got a question for you. Earlier on in the week, there was news kind of relating to what we're talking about this topic. There was news about Coinbase joining the S&P 500. Now, the reason that this is such a massive deal is a lot of people, you're talking about the older generations, have exposure to index funds, and the index funds love the S&P 500. That's like the thing, right? So the fact that Coinbase is joining the S&P 500, I believe it was May 19th. I think it already happened. Essentially means that, look, if you have an index fund that has exposure to the S&P 500, you have indirect exposure to Bitcoin, whether you like it or not, whether you disagree with Bitcoin, whether you don't like the industry. You now have exposure to Bitcoin. Every single person that has an index fund that has S&P 500 has indirect exposure to Bitcoin. And I think that's absolutely massive. And we all know, again, you dip your toe into the pool, into the Bitcoin pool, the orange pool, whatever you want to call it, and you end up going 100% a couple years later. I wish I did a lot sooner. Anyways, Michelle, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I agree that it's huge. I mean, mainstream adoption is really, we're just at the tip of the iceberg of mainstream adoption. And this is how it happens. Wall Street starts and then there's an avalanche of it. So we see moves like this. We see the continued normalization of asset allocation to crypto and Bitcoin companies. And it's just going to grow.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Also, I do want to mention also this article from I believe it was Decrypt. Let's check it out. The title is "Bitcoin on Track to Hit $500,000 as Government Entities Increase MicroStrategy Holdings Standard Charter." Now, what's really interesting, again, the pattern that I'm recognizing here, regardless of the country, the state, this specifically applies to U.S. retirement funds in California and New York. Again, it's not direct exposure to Bitcoin. It's indirect exposure to Bitcoin through MicroStrategy. I think that can explain a lot of MicroStrategy's performance, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people don't want to risk their careers potentially by just buying spot Bitcoin or buying the ETF. So they buy a stock instead, right? I think that's a much safer kind of career move. And that could explain a lot of MicroStrategy's performance recently. We're going to talk about MetaPlanet as well during the numbers segment. It's been absolutely crushing. I think it went up 100% in I think 24 hours yesterday. So we're going to cover that during the numbers segment. Anyways, it goes on to say Bitcoin price remains on track to hit $500,000 before Donald Trump's current term ends after government entities increase their indirect exposure to Bitcoin in the first quarter. It goes on to say, and this is according to Global Head of Digital Assets Research at Standard Chartered, whether it was South Korea's national pension fund, the Swiss National Bank, or U.S. state retirement funds, government entities' recent holdings of Strategy, which owns around 576,000 Bitcoin, quote, was very encouraging, wrote in a note on Tuesday. That group also included Swedish pension funds, a state-owned bank in France, and the Saudi Central Bank. So you got to break that down. I mean, this is a global phenomenon. You have South Korea. You have the Swiss bank. Switzerland is, tend to be known to be very conservative when it comes to banking in general. You have the Swedish pension funds. You have a state-owned bank in France, and you have the Saudi Central Bank. I mean, this is a global. You have America. You have Europe. You have Asia in there. Like, this is a global phenomenon. But again, it's indirect exposure. It's exposure through Strategy. It's not exposure through buying spot Bitcoin. It goes on to say in the first quarter, 12 government entities increased their exposure to Strategy, holding 31,000 Bitcoin worth of Strategy shares. It goes on to say, although investors can gain exposure to Bitcoin through spot ETFs that were approved in the US last year, government entities' increased Strategy holdings reflect, quote, widening structural demand for Bitcoin and Strategy's continued use as a Bitcoin proxy. It goes on to say, quote, we believe that in some cases, MSTR holdings by government entities reflect a desire to gain Bitcoin exposure where local regulations do not allow direct BTC holding. So very, very interesting. So again, Michelle, kind of doubling back to the conversation we were having earlier on in the show, ideally what this is all about is people holding Bitcoin in self-custody. And I think that this cycle, specifically what has happened is we've had a giant influx of the number go up crowd. That's what I've noticed this cycle. It's like number go up, Strategy, Meta Planet, great. I'm a big fan. I'm not trying to, talk badly about them. Big fan of both, right? But I feel like the fundamentals of Bitcoin, like the cypherpunkness of, a cycle ago, has essentially gone by the wayside. Like, people just forgot about it essentially. So what's your take on that? Why is self-custody so important?
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, but I think it was also inevitable. I mean, we don't get to hyper Bitcoinization if you just have this small little crowd of cypherpunks. But we all know who was here in the beginning and who was here before Wall Street adoption, who was here when they were persecuting people for trying to persecute people, and in some countries really going after people for holding their own Bitcoin. I think unfortunately, the number of people that care about freedom will always be a smaller percentage of the population. So, but it's never going away. And the most important thing is that Bitcoin is here and it does offer freedom if you are going to stand up and take it. So we may see, the percentages change where you get thousands and thousands of people coming in via exposures with traditional markets, but it is still an asset that's available to cypherpunks, to people that care about, getting out of the traditional fiat systems. And I think ultimately on a longer time frame, we will see Bitcoin de-dollarize the entire world, and then we will have won.
Do you think it's a net positive that Bitcoin essentially is going into the capital markets, and you essentially have all these quote unquote Bitcoin treasury companies popping up globally? Here in the United States alone, you have, of course, Strategy, with the rebrand, you have Nakamoto, you have 21. Do you think that's a net positive essentially? Because it seems like, I've been in the industry for a couple cycles now, and every cycle there's something that quote unquote outperforms Bitcoin, right? We all remember the ICO era. And then it was kind of like the altcoin era of 21. I feel like this era is it's kind of like the Bitcoin holding company.
Yeah.
That's the brand new, that's the current thing,
Right.
So what's the longevity on these things? Because a lot of these companies, I know they're getting very favorable terms. And the rates at which they're borrowing money are, incredibly low, but at the same time, they are leveraging themselves to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Let's put it bluntly. Is there any type of danger in that, Michelle?
Well, I think so. I mean, I kind of view it as, exposure to these assets. I find people that are excited about exposure to these assets are really chasing fiat returns. And the thing each cycle is always chasing quick and fast dollar returns. But ultimately, what will win is the people holding the Bitcoin at the end of the day, right? So, in my opinion, you shouldn't let these structures or these like short term plays separate you from your sats, because what's going to matter in the next 5, 10 or generations, 5, 10 years or generations ahead is who's actually holding the Bitcoin. So you don't want to trade that for anything. You don't want to trade that for some crypto, some ICO, or some stock. Like, what are you in that for? Ultimately, I think you're in that for more dollars, which is fine for a short-term play. But if you think about it long-term, what do you want to be holding? You want to be holding the underlying asset, and that is Bitcoin in self-custody.
Absolutely. And Sophie, what's your take on this, specifically the self custody aspect of it? Because I remember, the first couple of years when I entered the industry, you looked at me like an absolute crazy person, and then and then you took the orange pill as number went up. But the self custody aspect of it isn't easy for the everyday person that perhaps isn't on Bitcoin Twitter every single day, screaming from the rooftops.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think self custody is extremely inconvenient, especially to those who hold the majority amount of wealth right now, which are the boomers. They are the people with the pension funds. And that's why these holding companies are so attractive to them, because at the end of the day, in the short term, they do want dollars. They want to be able to ride into the sunset and burn their wealth and not leave anyone with anything. But the thing is, there is a silent wealth transfer that is happening currently as we speak. Every single person that owns their Bitcoin in self custody is slowly and stealthily taking the wealth back and reclaiming their power. I think that by taking self custody, that's exactly what we're doing. They think that they're gaming the system, that they are still going to be the middleman, that the banks are never going to go away, that they're still going to have the same system. But the reality is that once people who have self custody, that we have enough power with the amount of value that Bitcoin gets over time, they're going to actually be relying on us. They're going to be wanting us to borrow Bitcoin or to lend against their Bitcoin, because we're going to be the only ones that have that type of value and assets. So what's happening now is a silent transfer of wealth from one generation to another. And right now, the holding companies that supposedly have Bitcoin, this is just like a stepping stone to the inevitable.
I think that's an incredible point, specifically about the older generations, not being comfortable with self custody, and just, they go on their Charles Schwab account. They're like, oh, this is BlackRock ETF. So
my account is up 5% today.
Sounds pretty good.
Right.
Sounds pretty good.
Right.
I'm gonna just buy the ETF through my Schwab account, or Robinhood, whatever,
because it's what they understand.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then there's this radical form. We got to be honest here. It's this new radical form of thinking, which is stamping your seed phrase on a piece of metal, and buying a hardware wallet. And
but what's sillier, doing that or like writing out on a piece of paper that has your checking account and routing number and just like handing the paper to someone? I'm talking about checks that,
and then having to get into your car or walk across the street to go to the bank to deposit the check so that it hits your account in 2 to 3 business days. Like,
no, it's great. And then also like sending a wire. I used to
it's
tweet,
awful.
I used to tweet this like back in the day. I was like, look, you send a wire, Bitcoin wins.
Yeah.
Like you send one wire transfer, like Bitcoin wins. It's
true.
like they're like, what is this wire? Like you go to the bank, like, what is this wire for?
Right.
The process takes like an hour. It's crazy.
It costs like $25 to $50, like, regardless of the amount of your wire.
Yep. Like flat fees. They can't explain. It's just like, all right, it's 25, So yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's really kind of like the general theme of this segment of the show, which is there's two phenomenons that are happening, which is the world is getting a taste of Bitcoin, Ideally, it's not, in spot. Ideally, a lot of that is concentrated with the custodian, which is Coinbase, to be specific. Coinbase is like the custodian for the vast majority of the ETFs. And I believe Saylor's stack as well. So it's just a massive concentration of Bitcoin. And obviously that creates the risk of rehypothecation. But I think the signal here, as Bitcoiners, you really have to pay attention to is, guys, if you really want to reclaim back your sovereignty, regardless of the political environment, regardless of what's happening around you, regardless of where you live, to be frank, you can acquire Bitcoin, buy it, earn it, mine it, put that Bitcoin into self-custody. And by doing so, you become a sovereign individual. Like you now have the power to vote with your feet, go to a more favorable jurisdiction. And that's really what's happening here. That's really the beauty of Bitcoin. So the holding companies are great. These pension funds acquiring Bitcoin, phenomenal. It's great for number go up. We're reaching all-time highs. We're sitting at 111,000. I can't believe I'm even saying that, right? But I think the signal, and for everyone to remember, is not your keys, not your cheese. You want to take self-custody, right? Anyways, guys, it's been an amazing show. We have tons to cover, lots of stuff. Apparently, Opti was telling me this morning, the bond market is absolutely blowing up. So we're going to cover that a little bit. How does Bitcoin fit into that? But before we jump into that, I do want to give a shout out, of course, to Simply Bitcoin's lead sponsor. Simply Bitcoin wouldn't be possible without our partners. And of course, Bitcoin Well is our lead partner. Best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. Now, the reason we recommend Bitcoin Well, as we were talking about this basically all show, is it's an automatic self-custody Bitcoin on-ramp. So what does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. They don't even allow you to leave the Bitcoin on the exchange. And of course, this perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos, because self-custody is how you reclaim back your sovereignty. To get started, you put in your email address. It takes 2 to 5 minutes to get signed up, and bada bing, bada boom, you're ready to buy Bitcoin. Every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points, and you can redeem those points for many different prizes: a Simply Bitcoin hoodie, a Bitcoin axe, a BitAxe solo miner, an orange Cybertruck, a leather mint wallet, a stamp seed plate. But you could also play the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. Every time you play, you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million sats. We're going to do it live for you guys right now on air. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code has won 395 sats. If you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, you use that URL, you get 3 tosses into the Wishing Well for an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. So head over to bitcoinwell.com/simply today. All right, everybody, let's get to numbers. We have tons to talk about. We will be right back in just a second.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today.
All right, everybody, we're back. Scan the QR code. Oh, sorry, wrong. Opti's not here today. Scan the QR code on your screen. It'll take you directly to Stamp Seed website. You can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Don't write down your seed phrase on paper. Stamp it into titanium. At the time of recording, Bitcoin is at $111,300. Block height, 897,872. Sats per dollar, not only under 1,000, under 900. Holy cow. 898 sats per dollar. Wow. I remember when $100 used to buy you a million sats, right? Like, holy cow, man. Market cap, 2.21 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 9.54%. We still got a long ways to go. Percentage issued, 94.61%, decline from all-time high, negative 0.5%. Realized monetary inflation continuing to take fiat currencies to absolute school. We're sitting pretty at 0.84%. Anyways, I was talking to Opti about this morning. And this is what I want to talk about. The music is stopping. Apparently, the bond market is not doing so hot. In fact, if you guys know this movie, Margin Call, this is the point where we are in the movie, where they call in the big guns. They call in the dude with the red tie that flies in with the helicopter. And he's like, what's going on? And basically they're saying, like, look, things are collapsing right now. You got to pay attention to what's going on. So before I make the case, I have a clip of Ray Dalio talking about why, it's so important to pay attention to these things.
Watch the bond market. The bond market is the basis, it's the backbone of all markets. It is the risk-free, meaning default-free, probably default-free, interest rate that determines what all asset returns are going to be. And when there is a breakdown of the supply-demand picture for the bond market, you see a certain type of market action. You see long rates rising relative to short rates. You see the currency go down. You see gold go up because there's a movement out of that bond market because there's a supply and demand imbalance. When that happens, that raises interest rates, and it puts the Federal Reserve and other central banks in a bind. That supply-demand imbalance, in order to deal with that, when there's not enough demand, they're torn between allowing interest rates to rise and have the negative effect that that has on markets and the economy, or coming in and printing money, essentially, and buying bonds in order to provide the demand for those bonds that aren't there. And that...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are in the movie. This is what is happening in slow motion. And Ray Dalio explained, why this is so important. Now, one of the things that I got to point out that he says, if the bond market defaults, right? He said, big if, right? He said, it never defaults, but there's a possibility. And then he kept describing, the things that have been happening. How has gold been performing recently?
Extremely well.
Gold's been going to the moon, right? So let's take a kind of further deep dive into this. And again, this is a Yahoo Finance article. This isn't on Zero Hedge or anything. The headline is, why is the Fed quietly buying billions in bonds and hoping nobody notices? Well, the TLDR is nobody wants to buy the bonds. They don't feel secure in the bonds, right? So essentially, there's only really one way out of this. The only way out of this, and Larry Lepard wrote an amazing book, it's called The Big Print. The only way out of this is money printer go burr. And the reason we're talking about this is if you're most likely sitting in Bitcoin or you have exposure to Bitcoin, if you're watching Simply Bitcoin, when money printer goes burr, Bitcoin tends to go to the moon, right? But again, this is bad. This is bad. Essentially, no one has confidence in U.S. bonds, and the Fed has to go in there and buy the bonds themselves. So essentially, the money printer is using the printed money to buy the bonds that the market doesn't want to buy. And this isn't just happening in the United States. In Japan, it's way worse. And by the way, you want to know why the Meta Planet stock has been performing the way it has? You want to know why it's mooning? It's because people are leaving bonds. They're leaving bonds. Perhaps in Japan, I believe that the capital, the tax, the way that things are taxed, if you have a gain on Bitcoin, the tax rate is significantly higher if compared to if you have a gain on a stock, right? So, but people still want exposure to Bitcoin. So what do? They buy Metaplanet instead because they know that's basically by proxy buying exposure to Bitcoin. And look, I mean, the stock is, let's say in a year, has gone up 585%. I mean, just in the last couple of days, it went up from $4 to $15. That's absolute insanity. Now, why is this happening? I mean, it's so crazy because, you know, our internet, the Bitcoin culture, the meme culture has infected the Financial Times. They're using memes now to kind of, you know, describe what's happening. So the headline is the Japanese government bond market is in trouble. And there's a meme, I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me. That's absolutely hilarious. It goes on to say the Japanese government bond market was already having a bit of a springtime nightmare, but a poor auction of 20-year debt earlier this week has sent long end yields soaring to their highest level ever. Here's a long-term chart of the 30-year Japanese bond yield. As you can see, there's been an almost parabolic rise in long-term interest rates with seemingly no end in sight. The 40-year Japanese bond now yields nearly 3.7%, up a full percent point just since the beginning of April. That hurts. If the duration of the bond is, say, 20 years, investors have lost almost 20% in just a few weeks. In a high-grade government bond, that sort of thing isn't supposed to happen in the developed markets. Bonds are supposed to be safe asset class. The internals of the Japanese bond market look even more worrying. The 40-year is a benchmark bond, a frequently quoted part of the bond curve. Spare a thought, instead of for the 35-year-old JGB, the 40-year-old bond issued it 4 years ago, it now yields over 4.6%, almost 1% more than the on-the-run 40-year JGB, as you can see. The Japanese yield curve is upward sloping. In fact, it's the steepest yield curve in the developed world. That means longer maturity bonds should have higher yields, and yet that 35-year JGB now yields over 100 basis points more than the 40-year one, simply because it is less liquid and off the run. That kind of glitchy pricing is pretty stark evidence of the evaporating demand for longer-term Japanese debt. But again, this isn't just happening in Japan. So this is why I keep pointing this part. You guys have to watch this movie. This is where we are in the movie, where it's just like, okay, guys, you know what? The music is stopping. And we got to find an effing chair. That's what's happening right now. Ray Dalio laid it out. He made the case as to why the bond markets are so important. You can make the case that they're the backbone of this. Again, this isn't just happening in Japan. The Yahoo Finance article, why is the Fed quietly buying billions in bonds and hoping nobody notices? The reason for that is there aren't no buyers. That's what's happening. Now, the reason I'm talking about all of this, guys, and the music stopping, et cetera, is that if you are in Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the lifeboat. When this thing, you know, does what it does, right? Again, we are on and this isn't my words. This isn't simply Bitcoin being, you know, like panicking and dooming and glooming. These are Jerome Powell's words. The United States is on an unsustainable fiscal path with its current debt. You know, the big bill that was just talked about, was still being talked about in Congress. Again, the deficit spending is going to be crazy. The US government spends $1 trillion every 100 days, $1 trillion with a T. That's more than the GDP of most countries on planet Earth. Just to give you guys a perspective, you know what the GDP of El Salvador is? 32 billion. The US government spends 100 trillion with a T every 100 days. So that means that in the next 5 years or so, just the interest on the debt alone is going to be the biggest expense for the US government. Forget about Medicare, forget about military, forget about any of that. Just the interest to service the debt, right? So I think the bond market is starting to reflect that. And this is why you have extremely intelligent people like Lynn Alden basically saying nothing stops this train. This is why you have extremely intelligent people like Larry Lepard writing the book, The Big Print. The only way out of this, I mean, I read you guys the article. When they say that the Fed is buying bonds, what they're basically saying is the Fed is creating money out of thin air. to buy the bonds that the market doesn't want to buy. That's what it means, right? It's like a little kind of bait and switch. So anyways, Michelle, you're very intelligent. I'm sure you've been paying attention to this as well. Is the Titanic sinking?
It is. This is how fiat currencies hyperinflate. And people think that that is, some outlandish statement, but it's not. It's just math. Like you said, people much smarter than all of us are screaming this from the rooftops, and the maths. The United States debt is going parabolic. Moody's, which is a credit rater, just downgraded the United States for the first time in history. So I think what's coming is going to be worse than 08. They have absolutely no option but to print. Larry is correct. They will print. And this whole concept that nobody understands what's going on and they hope that we don't notice, that's all by design, right? They don't want you to know that the whole thing is a complete house of cards, but it is, and it's about to fall. The music is about to stop, and you can only buy chairs with Bitcoin.
Well, I love that. You can only buy chairs with Bitcoin. You guys have to understand where we are in the movie. Sophie, I don't know if you've seen Margin Call, but we're going to watch it tonight.
Yeah.
But yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are. If you guys are familiar with the movie, I wish I could play this for you guys, but there's copyright and stuff. This is where we are in the movie. Get yourself a chair, and that chair is Bitcoin. By the way, BT dubs. When I say the chair is Bitcoin, that means spot Bitcoin in self-custody, right? That is an actual chair. The other things that, the Bitcoin proxy stool, it's like an imaginary chair. It's a chair as long as they allow it to be a chair. But when Bitcoin is in self-custody, it's a chair. That's a chair made of, I don't know, what's the strongest thing? Titanium, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, Sophie, what are your thoughts?
To be honest with you, I don't know much about bonds. I'm kind of learning as the conversation goes along, but if they're going to print more money to kind of sustain this house of cards, like, I'm all for it, because that just means the acceleration of hyper Bitcoinization and number go up. So I mean, like, go US government, go Jerome Powell, keep doing what you're doing, never change. We love that.
Oh my God. So Sophie,
no.
So
I'm like the little girl in the meme with the house burning down in the background. Like, that's me.
So Sophie's an accelerationist, but no, guys, this is like serious stuff. Like, I'm telling you.
No, this sucks. Like, if you have bonds, I feel sorry for you.
But it's not just if you have bonds. If you're not on the Bitcoin lifeboat, like,
right.
Michelle said it, like, worse than 08 type of situation. One's
because in 08 it was like, oh, we're miscategorizing the bonds. Here it's like, no, they're the right bonds, they're just not worth anything.
Yes.
I mean, the market is pricing that. Anyways, I do want to read this post by Preston. I think it's very important because, again, I think everyone is seeing this. Again, Larry Lepard, Lynn Alden, some of the smartest people in the industry. Preston is saying, in the coming decades, the volatility of Bitcoin's price against desirable commodities, goods, and profitable equity will eventually start to stabilize. But its value against fiat will only get more volatile and maybe even violently volatile. People showing you a chart where Bitcoin's volatility against fiat is diminishing and suggesting that it'll only keep getting less volatile moving forward are seriously misunderstanding what's happening and where this is about to go next. But hey, I could be wrong. And I think, that's, guys, again, there's, this is nothing to celebrate about. Like, I understand, Sophie, because it's like, okay, hold Bitcoin, number go up. This is catastrophic. Like, this is really bad. And again, we didn't cause this. We're not responsible for this. This is the central banking system. This is what Michelle said. You're saying every fiat currency ends like this, does it not?
It does. All fiats fail. The average lifespan of a fiat currency is 200 to 250 years, and we're there. It's the average lifespan of an empire as well. So that's a separate conversation. But all fiat fails, and the dollar has been the global reserve currency for our entire lifetimes. So there's a normalcy bias. And we think it could never happen here. But you guys know, like, it happened in Lebanon, it happened in Nigeria, it happened in Cyprus, it happened in Venezuela. Like, currencies absolutely can and do hyperinflate. And you want to be prepared if that happens, because the math is mathing.
Absolutely. You want to get something that cannot be debased, right? You want to get something, you want to get a hard asset. This is why gold is performing. You heard Ray Dalio himself, right? And again, as Bitcoiners, we believe that Bitcoin is superior to gold. It has better characteristics. Gold is not absolutely scarce, right? So very interesting times. And again, the US debt is unsustainable. Again, Jerome Powell's words, not mine. Pick up a copy of the big print, take a look at Lynn Alden's work. Everyone is seeing the signs. We're starting to see the signs. Opti's starting to see the signs. It's incredibly obvious. Find yourself a chair before the music stops. I mean, not to be doomer gloomer, but again, it's there. You just have to pay attention to the signs. Anyways, guys, we're going to get to the news segment. Today is Bitcoin Pizza Day. So we're going to be talking about that. Jerome, sorry, I said that incorrectly. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon clears Bitcoin for bank. That's right. One of Bitcoin's biggest naysayers, haters, is basically saying, you know what, for the bank, it's okay. Bitcoin's fine. I love the power of free markets. Also, the Genius Act passes its 60 vote threshold. I believe the final vote was 66. So that's awesome. Incredible victory for Senator Lummis. And, Senator Warren was on the floor. It's just, I got a screenshot of it. It was incredibly symbolic. Now, again, this is a stable coin bill, but it is positive for Bitcoin because, again, it creates more regulatory certainty for the industry. And the next bill to come after this is going to be the Bitcoin Act 2.0 that was introduced by Senator Lummis and Congressman Begich of Alaska. So anyways, we're going to talk about all that in just a second. We will be right back. We're going to hit the news.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Casa. Casa makes self-custody easy and secure. As a Bitcoiner, I care about holding my own private keys, but multi-sig can sometimes get tricky. Casa nails it with a multi-key security. So even if one key gets lost or stolen, your Bitcoin stays safe. And you don't give up custody, meaning no one could access your Bitcoin but you. No seed phrase anxiety, no single point of failure. I've been telling my friends and family about Casa for years. Their UX and UI on their app is by far the best in the industry. Inheritance planning is built in, and they even offer Casa for Business if you're thinking about a Bitcoin treasury. Hit up casa.io today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off Casa Standard or Casa Premium. Head over to casa.io. I want to give a shout out to our partner, CoinKite. If you take your Bitcoin security seriously, you'll need the best Bitcoin hardware wallet on the market to take self-custody. That's where Cold Card comes in. The Cold Card Q is the most advanced Bitcoin signing device ever made. It's got a full keyboard, larger screen, and NFC support, making air-gap signing easier than ever. It's built for power users who want the ultimate security without sacrificing usability. And if you're looking for a battle-tested, uncompromising cold storage, the Cold Card MK4 is your go-to with PSPT signing, an industrial-grade secure element, and USB-C. It's the perfect blend of security and convenience. Both devices are, of course, 100% Bitcoin only, open source, and built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Secure your Bitcoin the right way with the Cold Card Q and the MK4. Head over to coldcard.com today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 5% off anything on the store.
All right, everybody, we are back. Like I said, historical moment. Genius Act passes 60 vote threshold and needed 60 votes to get over the cloture and essentially be considered. And again, that was the hardest part. The hardest part was getting 60 votes because essentially there needed to be an element of bipartisanship. And me and Sophie were essentially watching this as like a sports game. And it was stuck. It got 60 votes. And then I believe Senator, forget his name, but I have it. I think Warnock. Yeah, Senator Warnock withdrew his vote. It went down to 59. And then all of a sudden, like when time was getting to the very end, all these senators piled up and it got to 66 votes and it passed. So big win, I would say, for the industry. It creates regulatory certainty and clarity for stable coins. And again, this indirectly, I think, benefits Bitcoin because it tells companies and countries essentially that the U.S. government is thinking long term when it comes to digital assets. Here is Senator Lummis, the Bitcoin senator for Wyoming. She says, she's referring to the Genius Act, establishes America as the leader in digital assets. Now, what I found really, really interesting, the next headline is JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon clears Bitcoin for bank. I mean, I swear to God, it's so interesting because every single time, every naysayer has just gotten owned, right? I think Peter Schiff is speaking at the Bitcoin conference, right? Like, what does he have to say at this point? Like Bitcoin obviously won, right? So anyways, JP Morgan CEO still isn't a fan of Bitcoin, but he's not letting his personal feelings get in the way of business at the bank. Quote, when I look at the Bitcoin universe, the leverage in the system, the misuse, he said at the company's annual investment day Monday, noting that bad actors can use it for trafficking and terrorism. Quote, I am not a fan of it. We're going to allow you to buy it and we're not going to custody it. We're going to do it to put on statements for clients. So, I don't think we should smoke, but I defend your right to smoke. I defend your right to buy Bitcoin. Go at it. I mean, if that you guys, you don't understand, that is the biggest victory. Take a victory lap. That is a concession. The reason he's doing this, and I'm telling you, it's the same reason that I was telling you that, like, the moment the U.S. government, the moment that Trump got elected, I said, look, Russia and China, regardless of how they feel about Bitcoin, they're inevitably going to have to buy Bitcoin because market forces are essentially going to put pressure on them to say, hey, you know what? If we don't want to get left behind by the United States, we're probably going to have to buy the dip. We're probably going to have to stack some corn, right? And this is exactly what happened to JP Morgan, right? You know what's happening? High net worth clients are basically saying, hey guys, why don't you offer this? Like, I'm one of your biggest clients. I'm worth, $10 million, $100 million. Like, why can't I buy Bitcoin through you? Like, what's going on? They don't want to lose that clientele, right? So what are they doing? They say, okay, you know what? Yes, we can sell you Bitcoin, but you can't custody it with it. Like, that is a win. This is like the equivalent of when the Vanguard CEO basically said, yeah, we're not going to allow it, like BlackRock. And then literally the CEO got resigned like 2 or 3 weeks later. It's the equivalent to that, and you got to love market forces when they do it. But anyways, what I wanted to focus on today, because it is a celebration a little bit, it is Bitcoin peaks a day. So essentially Bitcoin peaks a day. For anyone who's new to the industry, I'll explain it. Essentially what happened. Bitcoin peaks a day, celebrated every year on May 22nd, marks the first time Bitcoin was used to buy a physical good. So again, it became money on that day. So May 22nd of 2010 is when Bitcoin became money, and it became money when it was used to buy a physical good in real life. Now check out the amount. On this day in 2010, Laszlo, sorry, I can't pronounce the name, a Florida-based programmer paid 10,000 BTC, 10,000, that's like $1 billion, for 2 large Papa John pizzas worth about $41 at the time. He didn't order them directly. Instead, he posted on Bitcoin Talk forum offering the coins, and another user accepted the deal and ordered the pizzas for him. That transaction is now legendary in crypto circles because those 10,000 BTC would be worth over 1.1 billion today. The purchase wasn't instant. It took 4 days for someone to agree to the trade, which shows just how new and uncertain Bitcoin was back then. And today is that day. We're celebrating Bitcoin peaks today. I believe Papa John's pizza. Papa John's till this day, I think it has like a special offer on Bitcoin peaks today or something. I think you could still pay in Bitcoin. But I mean, 10,000, that was the price for Bitcoin to become money. Because before then, it was an experiment. The only money people knew was fiat. It was dollars. It was coins. What do you mean this digital money that comes out of these, at the time, CPUs? Like, that isn't money. Like, what are you talking? That has no value. He made it valuable. He basically said, oh, it does have value. I'm going to use it as money. And then ever since, now we have nation states.
Did they even have Venmo or Zelle or anything
No,
at that point?
it was
this was the first time that there was an instant payment of that kind that could be done. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, those were the BBM days. You guys remember the BBM days, right?
BlackBerry.
Yeah, the BBM days. BlackBerry Messenger and Brick Breaker. Like that's 2010, right? Like that's how early it was. The internet was a totally, like, YouTube wasn't even taken off back then. Facebook was relatively new. MySpace was still being used, right? Where you got to put who your favorite friends are and stuff. Like,
that was amazing. Let's bring that back.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back. And you get to customize your page with HTML and all that stuff. Anyways, Michelle, how do you feel? Bitcoin peaks today. I mean, this guy's an absolute legend. This guy's, I'm from Miami. I apologize. Pizza. But
it's super cool. And right on the heels of Steak and Shake accepting Bitcoin, right? So, I mean, what an amazing time it is to be in Bitcoin. So Steak and Shake, a national chain, has just started accepting Bitcoin. And so there's no better time to celebrate Pizza Day, where it all started.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Do you think people should be, I saw some screenshots of Bitcoiners on we still got to go to Steak and Shake. We got to go to Steak and Shake.
And they are seed oil free. So
they
not
use
only
tallow.
Not only do they accept Bitcoin, but they follow the Bitcoin ethos. And, they've been hearing us all complain about the seed oil. So that's really cool. They use beef tallow, and I believe that their beef is 100% grass fed as well. So
that's
good
awesome
stuff. It's
Bitcoin
good stuff. We can actually go there tonight if you want.
It's
even though it's Pizza Day.
Everybody go eat a burger for Pizza Day. Buy it in Bitcoin.
It's almost as if Bitcoin fixes things. Yeah, but it's very special. Also, I saw too, kind of breaking news as well. GameStop is officially following the Hal Finney account. We all know the GameStop meme. That was kind of like a rebellion of the millennials. There's all these hedge funds that were trying to take down GameStop. Again, everything's digital these days. You don't really have to go to a store to buy video games, right? So, it's I don't want to call it blockbuster, but it, kind of heading down that path. And then a bunch of millennials just got together and essentially rebelled against these hedge funds that were trying to take down their childhood memories, essentially. And it's like, no, you're not taking it down. And essentially GameStop finds itself right now with, I think it was $4.7 billion worth of cash. And we all know what has happened. Remember, the story of MicroStrategy, Saylor has admitted this many times. He said, look, it was either going to be a quick death or a slow death. There was no way to compete with Microsoft. Microsoft was essentially giving the software for free. We needed to take a risk, and we went in Bitcoin. Metaplanet, very similar story. Did you guys know that Metaplanet is a hotel chain? They're a hotel chain, all right? It's a hotel chain. When I first heard the name, I was like, what?
Why did I think it was like an AI?
That's what I'm saying. It's a hotel chain that was heavily impacted by the pandemic, right? So what did they do? They pivoted to a Bitcoin strategy, and now all of a sudden, these are some of the best performing stocks in the world, right? So again, if you're GameStop, right, you're sitting on $4.7 billion worth of cash, and you kind of have a blockbuster business model. Let's be honest. I love GameStop. I have good memories there, but I could just download things to my Xbox these days. I don't have to drive to a store, right?
They should sell hardware, Bitcoin hardware,
right? They should just pivot.
They should sell ASICs,
right? They should just pivot. They maybe change the name to Bitcoin Stop or something. I don't know. But they have a lot of cash, and they can follow the MicroStrategy playbook, and they can find themselves potentially in a very good situation. So
that they were buying Bitcoin.
They did, but they never went through with it. Yeah,
get on that.
I know. Can you imagine? They could have bought it $75K, right?
Yeah.
They kind of missed the boat a little
rough.
bit. It's rough. But I think a lot of are they playing games? Is that even what's the legality of because it's we're following Hal Finney. What does that say? It's we're going to buy Bitcoin.
I hope that it's coming. Some of these all this fiat stuff takes time and approvals and all kinds of nonsense. So hopefully they get in sooner rather than later, and whether they bought at 70 or 100 won't matter when Bitcoin's at 1 million, 5 million.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, guys, we're going to talk to Michelle during the culture segment. All things Michelle. What is Michelle working on these days? What's on her radar? And should be an interesting discussion. We'll be right back in just a second. We're going to hit the culture segment.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledin has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally not only have an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledin is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well, and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to hodl while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust, allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you today. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Head over to ledin.io today.
All right, everybody, big breaking. Bitcoin is at 111,900. It hit 111,999, on the verge of hitting 112,000. As these numbers get bigger, it's going to be harder for me to say. It used to be a lot easier. Like Bitcoin just broke 10K. Bitcoin just broke 111. Anyways, we got Michelle Weekley in the house joining us. Bitcoin legend, just globe trotting the world, speaking at different Bitcoin conferences, dropping signal. Michelle, welcome to the show. Happy to have you.
Great to be here, guys. Do I get to see you both next week?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We will be in Vegas. The whole Simply Bitcoin crew will be in Vegas. It's going to be crazy. 3 days of just nonstop action. Hope to see a lot of you guys there. So yeah, we'll see you next week, Michelle.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So Michelle, talk to me. What's been on your radar lately? What's been on your mind?
Oh, there's been so much nonsense. You guys know I was a big advocate for people going out and voting for Trump. And I don't regret that at all, but I am bummed about some of the things that have not happened. But I don't believe that the reaction should be more apathy. I think we need to care. We can go down. I promised not to get you in trouble. So I'm not going to make any suggestions. We don't do that by just apathetically saying, oh, we don't care, because you might not care about politics, but unfortunately politics does care about you. It's going to come for you if you are not involved or defending against the other side that wants to regulate your life into nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, something that we as a community, we were kind of forced to pick a side, unfortunately. Unfortunately, depending on how you see it, but Operation Choke Point 2.0 was real.
Yeah.
And it did a tremendous amount of harm for our industry. And it created a lot of uncertainty, right? And now there was news that was coming out when I interviewed Senator Lummis in January. That essentially, a lot of there was a cover up. The Federal Reserve was involved itself in a lot of these regulatory actions against these so-called crypto-friendly banks. Right now, it's come off that Charter Bank was essentially, it didn't need to go under. It was targeted and shut down on purpose because it was friendly towards the Bitcoin industry. There was the repeal the veto of this it passed through the House, it passed through the Senate, and President Biden essentially vetoed the repeal of SAB 121.
Yeah.
And essentially what that did is it galvanized as an industry, we're like, oh, wait a second. And then not to mention, of course, the arrest of the Samurai Wallet developers, right?
And the Tornado Dev.
Yeah, that's it's interesting because they started the Tornado Dev because they started with the small fish.
Yeah.
And then they set the precedent. And then when the precedent was set, Coin Center sued. They lost the lawsuit. They moved on to Samurai, like within a month, right?
Yeah.
So like it was on purpose.
And they were going to keep going.
Yes, 100%. And I'll back that up with, there was a vote in the House last year that essentially would make it illegal for the federal government to launch a CBDC. And essentially that vote went, unfortunately, it is what it is. And again, I do want to give credit where credit is due, because the Genius Act was passed and it required bipartisanship. I think the Republicans only have 52 they only have
majority.
52. They only have a 52 Senate majority, so they needed, I think like eight or nine Democrats in this recent vote. So again, it's not monolithic, and I don't want to make it partisan. But the previous administration was very hostile towards the industry. Like Elizabeth Warren, she campaigned on an anti-crypto army, right? And the reason I'm talking about the House vote is that the House vote happened last year, and perhaps things have changed since this previous election, but the House vote was across party lines. And essentially it was one party voted for the possibility of a CBDC in the future, and another party voted against the CBDC in the future. And then Trump realized this and he made it part of his campaign. And I remember the process. Like he said it at a campaign speech, and he was like testing the waters a little bit. And he was like, if you elect me, the way that Trump does things. Yeah. Like, if you elect me, I'll forbid a CBDC. And the crowd went wild. He's like, whoa.
Right.
It was, oh my God, I forget. Vivek Ramaswamy that gave the heads up, right? And then he was like, whoa. And I remember when that happened, I was like, guys, he's like a month or two away from saying he's going to support Bitcoin. Like once you start heading down that path, you're going to say Bitcoin. And then within a month later, he was like, if you vote for me, I'll end the war. I'll end Operation Choke 2.0, and I'll protect your right to Bitcoin.
And I'll free Ross.
And I'll free Ross. Right?
And he did.
Yeah, and he did. And everyone was like, yeah.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the industry was put in this predicament where, a lot of us are apolitical. A lot of us didn't want that. A lot of us didn't care what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
About politics, right? Like a lot of us have this cypherpunk, like, look, I have Bitcoin in self-custody, I'll be fine, or whatever.
Right. Just leave me alone.
Very naive take, by the way. Sophie and I are originally from Venezuela, right? Very, very naive take.
They're not going to leave you alone.
Yes. Politics do matter. Fiat voting, like I call it, does matter. Getting involved does matter. And believe it or not, maybe one individual vote doesn't hold a lot of power, but as a voting block, right? As Bitcoiners, we do hold a lot of influence. This last election is a testament of that. And by the way, one of my favorite sayings: if you're not in the room, you're not in the deal. We are in the room now in DC.
That's right.
We are in the room. Literally, we're in the room, right? I saw Frank Corva, political correspondent for Bitcoin Magazine. He just got his press.
Awesome.
He just got his press thing, right?
Right.
That's great.
At the Trump held the first ever crypto summit at the White House. Okay, and he had all of the industry leaders there. The Saylor wore an orange tie, right? I think you had David Bailey there as well. You had the Winklevi, you had CZ, and then not to mention all the pardons, right? You had Arthur Hayes, who was pardoned, right? Because a lot of people felt that this was a lot of these prosecutions were political. They weren't like actually concerned about the laws that these people were breaking. They just had the intent to go after the industry because they wanted to create an environment where there would be a monopoly for a central bank digital currency, right? And again, these aren't my words. You can hear Elizabeth Warren saying this herself. She's saying Bitcoin bad, CBDC good, right? So if you just connect the dots, it kind of, it paints a picture. But I think that's changing, Michelle. With this last election, I think that's changing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not binary, like, oh, we went out and voted once and now everything's great. Like, there's a sliding scale. There's a really wide distance between communism and total freedom. And we just want to and need to continue pushing towards freedom. And when things aren't getting done, remember, like, you can go out and fire these people if they're not representing you and the liberties that you care about. Go and fire them.
And when you say fire, essentially elect
Vote
them
them
out of
out.
office,
Yes.
vote them out of
Yes.
office, right? Because they are a representative. Supposedly, this is a representative. This is a republic, right? You
Right.
elect representatives to represent you in government, and they theoretically work for you, right?
Right.
So every 2 years we have the opportunity. By the way, we're gonna be covering this hard when the midterms start coming along. We got Trump, but this isn't the end, right?
It's
The
not.
midterms are literally in less than 2 years.
Right.
They're in November of 26, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah.
That's another crucial vote because you're going to
Very.
have people that are going to be pro CBDC and you're going to have people that are going to be pro Bitcoin.
Right.
And as a Bitcoiner, vote for the people that are pro Bitcoin, right? This isn't a political show where we talk about the other policies, but this is a Bitcoin show. At the end of the day, Michelle is 100% right. Like, you might not care about politics, but politics sure does care about you, right? So, I think as a collective, I hate saying that word as a Bitcoiner, but as a collective voting group block, we do have influence. And this last election was a testament of that. And Trump didn't win by a huge margin, right? So imagine you could make an assumption that at least 1 or 2 million of those votes were to be truthful, pro crypto people, right?
Yeah.
And Bitcoiners put it into that block as well. So I 100% agree with you. What else is on your mind these days, Michelle?
Well, we're busy building. The last 2 years have been super, super chaotic, as we've been discussing, and I know you are always covering. The regulatory environment made it nearly impossible for us to build. We were talking before the show about how our wallet had been locked out of the App Store for a while, and they were doing that to a lot of Bitcoin and crypto companies with apps in the Apple and Google Play stores. So we had to pivot constantly and sort of put a lot of things on hold. And it was a really frustrating time. So this year has been super exciting because of the regulatory clarity, because of the fact that we can collectively say, all right, we don't have to worry about going to jail because we put certain features in our wallet or in our product. And so we took a moment and sort of remapped our priorities, and we've been focused on building, and we have some big announcements that are going to be coming soon, and I'm really excited to be able to show you guys some of the work that we've been working on for years. Finally, now that innovation is allowed again in the United States.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly bullish. And just tell us a little bit about the company that you're with. What do they do?
I work with Byte Federal. I'm the director of product development there. Byte Federal was one of the very first Bitcoin ATM companies. All of our ATMs are made right here in Florida in the United States. We're really proud of that. And we run the full stack. We manage the hardware and the software. So it's really a made in America company full of many people who are from former communist countries. So people who really understand the importance of freedom and liberty and being involved. So I am super, super proud to work with Byte Federal. And we do have a non-custodial app that you can use if you want to, have a place to hold your Bitcoin before you get it into cold storage, before you're comfortable with a hardware wallet. We're working on a digital on-ramp to go with our ATM. And we also have a real estate product that we're working on and a merchant portal. So all kinds of really exciting stuff in the pipeline.
That's awesome. Very, very cool. Go check out Byte Federal. You can find them on X, or you can just search them on Google. You can literally find an actual ATM.
That's right.
And of course, I do want to give a shout out to Michelle Weekley for joining us on Simply Bitcoin Live today. If you guys enjoyed today's show, make sure to smash that like button. We're very close to breaking 300 likes I just want to give a shout out to the live stream. 2,540 of you. 2,540 of you guys watching live, plus the Rumble numbers as well. Smash the like button, share the show if you guys are enjoying the content. Before we wrap it up, I do want to give a shout out to our conference sponsor. Coming up next week, Bitcoin 2025 in Las Vegas, Nevada. First time a Bitcoin conference is going to have a sitting vice president who is going to be having a keynote. Also, of course, legendary freedom fighter Ross Ulbricht will be at the conference. He will be speaking as well, and both of Trump's sons will be speaking. Of course, you have the Bitcoin senator, you have Jack Mallers, you have the White House crypto and AI czar David Sachs, and of course, you have the one and only Chad Saylor, Michael Saylor, who's going to be making an appearance as well. So guys, you definitely don't want to miss it. It's May 27th through the 29th at the Venetian in Las Vegas, Nevada. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off, and we'll see you guys in Vegas. Like Michelle said, she's going to be there next week. The whole Simply Bitcoin crew is going to be there. We're going to bring our merch. In fact, we're going to have a booth in the media segment. Hope to see you guys there. Swing by the booth. Hope to see you guys. Go to Bitcoin 2025, use promo code SIMPLY, get 10% off, scan the QR code below. Anyways, guys, love you all. We'll see you on the next show. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.